Reflections of a Young Man on the Choice of Profession by Karl Marx. Nature herself has determined the sphere of activity in which the animal should move, and it peacefully moves within that sphere without attempting to go beyond it, without even an inkling of any other. To man, too, the deity gave a general aim, that of ennobling mankind and himself. But he left it to man to seek the means by which this aim can be achieved. He left it to him to choose the position in society most suited to him, from which he can best uplift himself and society. This choice is a great privilege of man over the rest of creation. But at the same time, it is an act which can destroy his whole life, frustrate his plans, and make him unhappy. Serious consideration of this choice, therefore, is certainly the first duty of a young man who is beginning his career and does not want to leave his most important affairs to chance. Everyone has an aim in view, which to him seems great, and actually is so, if the deepest conviction, the innermost voice of the heart declares it so. For the deity never leaves mortal man. Wholly, not without a guide, he speaks softly and certainly. But this voice can be easily drowned, and what we took for inspiration can be the product of the moment, which another moment can perhaps also destroy. Our imagination, perhaps, is set on fire, our emotions excited. Phantoms flit before our eyes, and we plunge headlong into what impetuous instinct suggests, which we imagine the deity himself has pointed out to us. But what we ardently embrace soon repels us, and we see our whole existence in ruins. We must therefore seriously examine whether we have really been inspired in our choice of profession, whether an inner voice approves it, or whether this inspiration is a delusion, and what we took to be a call from the deity was self-deception. But how can we recognize this except by tracing the source of the inspiration itself? What is great glitters? Its glitter arouses ambition, and ambition can easily have produced the inspiration or what we took for inspiration. But reason can no longer restrain the man who is tempted by the demon of ambition, and he plunges headlong into what impetuous instinct suggests. He no longer chooses his position in life. Instead, it is determined by chance and illusion. Nor are we called upon to adopt the position which offers us the most brilliant opportunities. That is, not the one which, in the long series of years in which we may perhaps hold it, will never tire us, never dampen our zeal, never let our enthusiasm grow cold, but one which we shall soon see our wishes unfulfilled, our ideas unsatisfied, and we shall inveigh against the deity and curse mankind. But it is not only ambition which can arouse sudden enthusiasm for a particular profession. We may perhaps have embellished it in our imagination and embellished it so that it appears the highest that life can offer. We've not analyzed it, not considered the whole burden, the great responsibility it imposes on us. We have only seen it from a distance. And distance is deceptive. Our own reason cannot be counselor here, for it is supported neither by experience nor by profound observation. Being deceived by emotion and blinded by fantasy. To whom then should we turn our eyes? Who should support us where our reason forsakes us? Our parents, who have already traveled life's road and experienced the severity of fate, our heart tells us. And if our enthusiasm still persists, if we continue to love a profession and believe ourselves called to it after we've examined it in cold blood, after we've perceived its burdens and become acquainted with its difficulties, then we ought to adopt it. Then neither does our enthusiasm deceive us, nor does over hastiness carry us away. But we cannot always attain the position to which we believe we are called. Our relations in society have, to some extent, already begun to be established before we are in a position to determine them. Our physical constitution itself is often a threatening obstacle, and let no one scoff at its rights. It is true that we can rise above it, but then our downfall is all the more rapid, for then we are venturing to build on crumbling ruins. Then our whole life is an unhappy struggle between the mental and the bodily principle. But he who is unable to reconcile the warring elements within himself, how can he resist life's tempestuous stress? How can he act calmly? And it is from calm alone that great and fine deeds can arise. It is the only soil in which ripe fruits successfully develop. Although we cannot work for long, and seldom happily, with a physical constitution which is not suited to our profession, the thought nevertheless continually arises of sacrificing our well-being to duty, of acting vigorously, although we are weak. But if we have chosen a profession for which we do not possess the talent, we can never exercise it worthily. We shall soon realize shame on our own incapacity and tell ourselves that we're useless created beings, members of society who are incapable of filling their vocation. Then the most natural consequence is self-contempt. And what feeling is more painful and less capable of being made up for by all that the outside world has to offer? Self-contempt is a serpent that ever gnaws at one's breast, sucking the lifeblood from one's heart and mixing it with the poison of misanthropy and despair. An illusion about our talents for a profession which we have closely examined is a fault which takes its revenge on ourselves. And even if it does not meet with the censure of the outside world, it gives rise to more terrible pain in our hearts than such censure could inflict. If we have considered this, and if the conditions of our life permit us to choose any profession we like, we may adopt the one that assures us the greatest worth, one which is based on ideas of whose truth we are thoroughly convinced, which offers us the widest scope to work for mankind and for ourselves, to approach closer to the general aim for which every profession is but a means: perfection. Worth is that which most of all uplifts a man, which imparts a higher nobility to his actions and all his endeavors, which makes him invulnerable, admired by the crowd, and raised above it. But worth can only be assured by a profession in which we are not servile tools, but in which we act independently in our own sphere. It can be assured only by a profession that does not demand reprehensible acts, even if reprehensible only in outward appearance, a profession which the best can follow with noble pride, a profession which assures this in the greatest degree, is not always the highest, but is always the most to be preferred. But just as a profession which gives us no assurance of worth degrades us, we shall surely succumb under the burdens of one which is based on ideas which we later recognize to be false. There we have no recourse but to self-deception. And what a desperate salvation is that which is obtained by self-betrayal. Those professions which are not so much involved in life itself as concerned with abstract truths are the most dangerous for the young man whose principles are not yet firm and whose convictions are not yet strong and unshakable. At the same time, these professions may seem to be the most exalted if they have taken deep root in our hearts, and if we are capable of sacrificing our lives and all endeavors for the ideas which prevail in them. They can bestow happiness on the man who has a vocation for them, but they destroy him who adopts them rashly, without reflection, yielding to the impulse of the moment. On the other hand, the high regard we have for the ideas on which our profession is based gives us a higher standing in society, enhances our own worth, and makes our actions unchallengeable. One who chooses a profession he values highly will shudder at the idea of being unworthy of it. He will act nobly if only because his position in society is a noble one. But the chief guide which must direct us in the choice of a profession is the welfare of mankind and our own perfection. It should not be thought that these two interests could be in conflict. that one would have to destroy the other. On the contrary, man's nature is so constituted that he can attain his own perfection by working for the perfection, for the good of his fellow man. If he works only for himself, he may perhaps become a famous man of learning, a great sage, an excellent poet, but he can never be a perfect, truly great man. History calls those men the greatest who have ennobled themselves by working for the common good. Experience acclaims as happiest the man who has made the greatest number of people happy. Religion itself teaches us that the ideal being who all strive to copy sacrificed himself for the sake of mankind, and who would dare to set it not such judgments? If we have chosen the position in life in which we can most of all work for mankind, no burdens can bow us down, because they are sacrifices for the benefit of all. Then we shall experience no petty, limited, selfish joy, but our happiness will belong to millions. Our deeds will live on quietly but perpetually at work, and over our ashes will be shed the hot tears of noble people.